Okay, so we're going to look at two ways to stop a counter deployment, stop him from drawing the weapon. So again, realistically, he may approach you with the weapon disguised, the concealed weapon. So the moment that you see him pull up his hoodie, oh, that's the time to move in. Now, let's look at the classic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu one, which is taught in most Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies that have the proper self-defense curriculum. And then we'll look again at another one that you see in other militaries and police systems that comes from older school Jiu-Jitsu, and I've also seen in combat sambo. Basically, it's a two-handed version versus a one-handed version, and we'll talk about why you need to know both, particularly if you're a peace officer. So when he begins here, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to keep that weapon in its place. I don't want him to pull it out. And so we're going to work at the front and the end of the lever. It's a really simple idea. So as I step in, one hand is going to jam down like this, and the other hand is going to jam in. So now pull your arm out, it becomes very difficult, and as I step forward, as I put my head into place, again, depending on the height difference, there's a built-in headbutt I can do, or if he's much taller than me, I can simply bang into him and hopefully knock him off balance, okay? So that's the first step for counter deployment. I'm sitting here in the late hours in some lonely bus stop or something waiting for my taxi, and the guy comes up and pulls it. That's the first thing I want to do. All right, is make sure, open your hand up, try to catch him on the pad of his thumb here, and jam that in. Pull your gun out. Now pull hard this way. Yeah, if it's straight up and down force, this hand is stopping. But if he starts to twist his arm, that's why your second hand has to be here. Okay, so it's a really simple idea. I'm breaking it down for you, but basically you're going to be taken by surprise, and you want to move both hands at the same time. Okay, jam it down and jam it here. Some people teach with the hand here. That's fine too. But remember, just like in our first course, we do a lot of elbow control from pushes and different shoves. So because I train that way all the time, I tend to end up in this outside drag position. Okay, but as far as pushing on the arm, either one's acceptable. All right, so the first thing is your hands lead that motion. Boom, jamming down, jamming in. At the same time, I'm stepping in base like we always do, because no matter you're dealing with firearms, you're dealing with sticks, you're dealing with someone trying to headlock you, if your base isn't good, you're going to fall down. And then I get as close to him as possible. There's your built-in headlock. Okay. Now, if I've gotten this far and everything's gone well, this hand is going to slide down his forearm. Remember to keep your elbow up, because now it's my shoulder and elbow that's preventing him from pulling it out. And from here, I try to yank his hand out like this. Okay, and I use this position to put on this gooseneck, or what the Brazilians call a cow hand, because there's no geese in Brazil, they don't know that slang. And this gives me if he hasn't deployed it and I got there really early, I want to make sure I get that out before he uses the second hand. Now this lock isn't necessarily very strong, but you can put a lot of pressure on his wrist for at least for a second or two. If he starts struggling to get out, once again, you've got the handgun and it's a big chunk of metal. Don't even think of it as a handgun, think of it as a big chunk of metal, because it will crack his skull open if you hit him hard enough. That's a lot better tactical approach unless you're extremely familiar with firearms and the different models and the different situations. So the guy, I'm standing here, he comes. Now this time I went right to the wrist. I did it because I didn't feel it coming out, so my hand slid like this instinctively because I was already at phase 3. But remember, if you're a little bit late and that is coming out already, I need to shove that back in from this end as well. Now once I'm in position, this hand simply slides down and gets close to his wrist and pulls up. Okay? Now sometimes, you can see how I'm gripping his thumb here. Maybe I can, in this particular model, there's a spur on the end. If I get my hand out of there, sometimes that might be a better approach than the wrist lock. You have to, again, practice and try to make these as realistic as possible. But the concept's the same. I'm committing both hands to his one hand to stop it from coming out. Boom, and here's my built-in headbutt. Everything's gone well up to now, so I go here. Now let's say he's pulling this out. I can use the gun again as a lever to make his wrist bend. Now it's maybe possible to fire here, again, depends on what kind of weapon he's got and how it's designed. But again, from here, I'm in a lot better position, and I can switch to this cow hand here. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be able to control a guy like this forever, but at this point, I've now got the weapon. If it's a revolver, probably all this pushing and pulling on it hasn't dysfunctioned, you may be able to fire it. Okay, so that is one very efficient way that's standard in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to stop a deployment from the front. Let's do it again in slow motion. You may have that startle reflex for a second. See how I'm leaning forward? I'm going to exaggerate this, but I want my weight on it. Obviously, I wouldn't have my head forward this much. Boom, I come into here, and then I slide my hand. Now, at this point, again, because of my grip here, his wrist is starting to bend, so it's just a lot easier for me to peel that out. But it's not necessarily going to happen every time. And then, you know, for the movies, we can walk him to the police station. Again, make sure this elbow stays high, or he can yank his arm out the back. Okay? That's a good, solid counter-deployment technique that is, probably still is, but often ignored in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu curriculums because all they do is sport fighting. But any school that's still doing the proper curriculum, you should be able to get good instruction on that version.